Okay, once we've let everyone in from the waiting room, we will start. Okay, and I think that's it. So let's begin today's session. So welcome to Connect. This is actually the second in the series, and there'll be a third one coming up in September. I think it's September the 1st, if I'm not wrong. Alrighty, Will, shall we kick this off?
Yeah. So as Raj was saying, this is the second of 3 events. We're really digging into how to engage volunteers, particularly as we are thrown in and out of lockdown. We're hoping to support all of our not-for-profits, both in virtual volunteering. That's really our specialty, but we chat to hundreds of not-for-profits. So we're hoping to share their learnings in physical volunteering. And how do you go between the two, particularly when it's a month when everything's looking up and people are very keen to get out and about and volunteering physically again. And then when suddenly we're thrown back into virtual volunteering. So we're hoping to speak into both of those aspects. And today in particular, we're focusing on actually finding and engaging the right volunteer. So not the perfect volunteer, the right volunteer. We're constantly developing materials on other aspects of running not-for-profits and engaging with volunteers. So if there are any areas that you're trying to think about or trying to develop your organization, feel free to let us know. We would love to cater towards those needs as well. So to kick us off, the purpose of this webinar is really about talking about volunteers. And that's what we talked a little bit about in our last event for those who were able to attend that one as well. Because the reality is that not-for-profits have been finding and engaging volunteers for centuries. Does anyone actually know when the first charity was formed or what the first charity in the world ever did?
Yes, please put that in the chat or speak up if you want. We'll be giving away Will's computer for the lucky winner.
Whoa, I did not agree to that.
Short answer from me is no.
Short answer from Ian, thank you.
No idea.
It's an important piece of history, but I didn't know it either. It was I actually forget the actual name of it, but it was a kind of hospital set up in a castle. We're talking early 1st century or something like that, where they was set up out of a castle. Basically, there's some cool pictures of a castle and this hospital being set up by a royal family. Anyways, that was just a bit of trivia for your morning. We have been engaging volunteers for a very long time. And even in 2013 in Australia, a bit more recently, not-for-profits were the largest employer in Australia. About 10% of our workforce were employed by not-for-profits. And on top of that 10%, there were 4 million volunteers in Australia. So they're incredible numbers. We all know how important our volunteers are. So we just want to make sure that we're engaging them, supporting them, and using them in the best ways that we can. So throughout today's session, if you have a working webcam or video on your phone or device, we would love to see you. We'd love to interact with you. We don't want this to be a webinar where we're just spurting out information for an hour. We'd love to hear from you. So feel free to use the chat. Feel free to unmute and mention if you have any questions or answer anything, or you can answer those questions in the chat. There'll also be some polls and chance for you to engage there as well. So if you have a video, feel free to turn it on. We'd love to see you, see your beautiful faces, because we're not able to see many people here in Sydney at the moment. And as Raj said, we'll be offering his laptop out to the most engaged person today. Just so you know what you're in store for today, we'll be building on our collective knowledge. We'd love to get to know who you are and what your story is. We'll be looking at who the right volunteer is, what is the perfect volunteer, and then we'll look at how we can be engaging them. So between the pitch, online volunteer management, engaging and retaining volunteers, and of course, there's time for questions and answers afterwards. Our good friend Olivia will be monitoring the chat and let us know if we have time to answer questions on the go, but otherwise we'll be able to answer them at the Q&A session at the end. So thank you for joining us. We're in for a good day today. Raj, would you like to kick off our who's who?
Yeah, so if everyone can just type down who you are, where you're from, what's your name, what's your role that you do there. So we get to know what our collective wisdom is like on this chat. As a start, I would like to introduce Will. So Will is the person that many of you might have met when onboarding. So he's basically the team leader at Communitia who takes charge of all the not-for-profits that get onto our platform. And he's our platform expert as well as the one who helps all the not-for-profits figure out how to attract volunteers on the platform as well. He's like our guru when it comes to all the issues related to the relationship with the volunteers for the not-for-profit. So if you've got issues attracting them on the platform, he's the person that you actually go to.
Just platform issues, no life issues. No, that's okay. Yeah, me and my team, my team and I are here to help. We've interacted with many of you, making sure you're getting set up on the platform, from tech issues through to volunteer issues. We're here for you. But normally to get to me, hopefully you've had a conversation with Raj or one of his consultants. And so as part of the community services, we do offer free consultations for each not-for-profit in talking about your organization, your goals, and your challenges. So Raj will discuss with you how you can be using skilled volunteers and identify areas of your organization that would benefit from skilled volunteers. So Raj, he's been working in not-for-profits longer than I've been alive. I think those numbers add up. I haven't checked that against the timeline, but it's something like that. And he is able to provide a great breath of fresh air into your organization and really get that understanding of who you are, what your goals are, and what your needs are. So if you haven't had a chat with him yet, hopefully we can set you up with that this evening or this afternoon, and he would love to have a chat with you. That's who Raj is. He's our wise sage of community.
Thank you, Will. And we've got quite a lot of people who've put down where they come from. I see a lot of familiar names as well, like Koala Kids. We've got a lot of people from Red Cross. There's Wildlife Rescue who's on the platform, I believe, as well, isn't it?
We're thinking about it.
Thinking about it. Have you had a consultant and a C2 already, or?
Yeah, we had a discussion with Willem a couple of days ago.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Great. So we'll hopefully see you on the platform soon as well.
Yes.
So let's kick off the actual training right now. Cool. So the first topic that we're going to talk about is why do you want to engage volunteers? Will, you want to click down the slide?
Yes, I think we have a poll.
It's going to be after.
Oh, afterwards. Okay, no worries.
Yep. So the number of reasons why you would want to engage with volunteers. The first one is always about the labor. A lot of you all have already engaged with volunteers and know exactly what you want out of the volunteers. But these are the different reasons why you actually engage with volunteers. The first one, most of you have got volunteers coming in and they basically take up some kind of role or project or help you out with manual labor. The most common would be things like coming in, helping with an event. It could be like reception, ticket collecting and stuff like that. And that's the very basic of getting a volunteer in. Where we'd like to think about is actually going towards skilled and role-based volunteering. So skill-based is where you get a volunteer in to do something that is more specific. It could be in things like marketing, IT, accounting, finance. Think about it as if I'm going to get someone from a company, the company has got so many different departments. Where can I pull in a person from that department to help my organization? Because a lot of times with a not-for-profit, you're going to think about resource constraints, and I cannot employ that many staff. So think about bringing in these people from the corporate as well. You can start off with a project and then move on to role-based. And this is where someone actually will start volunteering every week, and it can be up to a year, 2 years. And really, if you can bring them in and manage to engage them the right way, these people will become, part-time staff with the not-for-profit as well. The second kind of role is a mentor consultant. So these are people who are experts in their fields. It can help you with people development. I know a lot of not-for-profits do not have the budget for training, but if you can bring in someone senior from a corporate, be it in marketing or whichever department it is, that person can shadow your current staff and give them that training to build up their capabilities and their skill sets. The other thing that can be done is actually talk about strategy. You might be able to get a group of people from different companies, and this is some of the projects that we do. For example, with marketing and management strategies as well as fundraising strategies, we might bring an expert from different companies to come in and brainstorm with your team. And this is something you can do with all the volunteers as well. It can also be a sounding board. If you've got a strategy already in place, how do I then make sure that this is the right way to go forward? And you can talk to people who've got that kind of experience, that kind of know-how to implement that strategy. And a lot of times we actually bring them in to talk to your board members as well. Because some of the decisions that you guys are making, especially at the strategy level, might be at the board member or at your executive management level. So you can bring in these kind of people as well. Subject matter experts are very important as well. These are more technical sometimes in nature, but it can also be the soft skills like marketing. But you can bring them in if you're assessing like your CRM system or need training in terms of your CRM or your IT, and you don't have that kind of expertise within the organization, you can bring these people in to basically boost that knowledge. And sometimes it could be just bringing them to train the staff as well, so that you get that expertise. And we've also had projects where actually we brought them in, they assessed what's in the market and what's the best fit for the not-for-profit in terms of the software that they're bringing in as well. So then you have a better idea of what actually fits. Fundraising is a very important part of every not-for-profit. And there are two aspects to this. When you bring in a volunteer, you are also bringing in a potential individual donor. If you build up that relationship with the volunteer, you find what they're going to happen is they're going to talk to their community. They might donate on their own or bring in friends and family that can donate as well. Very importantly is you'll find corporate sponsorship can come through that volunteering program as well. With volunteers putting up a lot more time with the not-for-profits, a lot of the corporate sponsors will want to build that relationship with the not-for-profit. And often when they talk about which not-for-profit I should choose to have that partnership relationship with or sponsor, it's to do with who their staff are also interested in being involved in. So if you attract the right volunteers, you'll find you can actually build a whole corporate sponsorship program just from treating the volunteers right and bringing more volunteers in and having more volunteer hours being done with a corporate. Building awareness is something a lot of people don't realize, but and it should be part of your induction program with volunteers as well, is although they're coming in to do a certain aspect for you, let's say they're coming in to do a finance project for you, part of your induction and part of how you bring in that volunteer is about saying, look, can you help us with our marketing as well? Be on the social media side of things, spread awareness about what we're doing, the campaigns we're running, who we are and what we're doing. And you find using that network is going to be very important in building that awareness as well. And it should be automatically done by volunteers once they get to learn about the organization and understand it and want to be a part of it. And this is something that we have to do to engage the volunteers to that level. Corporate engagement, you find a lot of the corporates actually want to be engaged with not-for-profits and their causes. They want to have a better CSR policy and be seen in the public eye as doing the right things. And one of the biggest things that they can do is actually through having their staff volunteer with not-for-profits. And you'll find there's a lot more corporates who want to do this. And it's all about finding what the right opportunities are for their staff to be involved with the not-for-profits as well. And this is something that we will focus on in the next few slides. And all of this actually lead to you increasing your supporter base. And that basically builds on in terms of your awareness, your fundraising, the skill sets that you're developing, and the labor that you can use, okay? So let's do a poll and find out basically why do you engage volunteers, or why do you see Okay, Olivia just mentioned that the poll is not working. So we'll move on to the next one. Hopefully down the road, we'll get the poll working again. So we'll skip the poll right now, Will, because yeah, it's not working.
Was I able to launch it just then? Can everyone see that poll? Excellent. That's what I'm here for, tech support.
Ah, and he's not a volunteer.
Yeah, so just choose what, the ones that resonate with you. We would love to hear where your needs are at the moment. Raj, are you able to see the answers as they come in? I've got the answers coming up.
Yeah,
Excellent. It's very interesting. It's like watching these little blue bars racing each other towards the finish line.
It is. And it keeps changing in terms of the lead. But I still think, yeah, 58% have actually said labor, which is either manual, skilled, or role. And that's actually the best one to have, because it means that you really are engaging the volunteers for the right reasons as well. Sometimes we struggle with the corporate engagement and stuff like that, where we just try and find an activity for volunteers, and it's not always the best way to engage the volunteers. It's like painting walls, which we gave as an example in the last seminar.
Is everyone able to see those answers? I've just tried to put them on my screen. Are you able to see those answers? Or?
Yes, okay for me, Ian.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, so yeah, here you can see 63%, 65% chosen that labor, the manual skilled.
I don't see them. Sorry.
don't see
Neither
them?
do I.
Okay.
Actually, Willem, I must say, I think I misunderstood your question, so neither do I.
Okay, not a problem. Thanks for feeding me false information, Ian. It's the last time I hire you.
Yeah, well, it's called military skill. Yeah.
Ian is very excellent with military vehicles, but potentially less so with Zoom. Here we go. I can share the results now. Can everyone see them now?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much for answering. It is excellent to see the breakdown, and also to see that there's actually a great spread across each of these categories. They're all important, and we want to speak into each of these today as well. So thank you for your time. Let's keep moving with that in mind. Okay, so it's really important at the beginning when we're talking about finding the right volunteer. It's important for you yourselves to know what you're looking for. So part of that is the answer to the previous question. Do you actually know which area of the organization volunteers are hoping to support? There are awesome volunteers that will actually reach out to you and send you an email and say, hey, these are my skills, how can I help? That's a great situation to have where you can bring them in that way. But particularly with the Community platform and the way we're hoping that the sector will move towards in terms of engaging skilled volunteers and allowing those with these skills in particular areas to actually create social impact with their skills that they've been developing in their roles and their professional life. We're hoping that not-for-profits will be able to really identify what skills they need, what skills they're looking for, who is going to best support my organization, what are the specific needs we have to reach our goals in the short term and long term. We also want to think about cultural fit. It's just like when you're hiring a new employee, how will this person fit into our team? Are they goals aligned? Are they passion aligned? How do they fit into our team? And also the commitment and role clarification, just like with a new employee or an intern or something like that. It's really important to set those boundaries and understand how much time your volunteer can contribute, what they're hoping to get out of it, and what they're expecting to give. So if we're able to clear that up at the beginning in terms of who the right volunteer is for you, because it's going to be different for every organization, for every role. So really making sure that that's clear and you can work with the volunteer to understand how's the best way that you're going to work together and engage with each other. So that's right at the beginning in terms of finding the right volunteer. Then we move on to the pitch. Raj, you want to take us through this one?
So a lot of times what we think about volunteers is that they're just going to come in and do the job, and we're not going to put too much effort in recruiting them. And that is quite a misconception that's out there, because really with the volunteers, we've got to treat them just like we would treat getting staff in. And we've got to put in as much effort. In fact, we should put in more effort than getting staff in. There's something I learned from Witsi as well, because she uses it in her training, is that when we talk about volunteers, we often see them as below staff in terms of the effort that we put into recruiting them. And what she was telling me was actually it's something quite the opposite. You have to put in a lot more effort into the volunteers to get them into the organization. Simply because with a volunteer, their time is precious and they feel like they're giving something to you. So they need you to have more effort on your part to get them into the organization. So just like how you'd engage with staff, you need the advertisement, the job description, the induction and training, the brand, and the why. With the advertisement, what I find a lot of times is that a lot of not-for-profit just say, look, I need a volunteer, I need them to do this, and that's it. But when you put out an advertisement for staff, you put a lot more effort into that pitch that you're giving out. And that's exactly what you need to do with the volunteer. You need to have a job description, exactly what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, what's the timeline, right? What's the expectations, and also the benefit of joining the not-for-profit. All that has got to be part of my advertisement to the volunteer. HR is also very important. A lot of times we bring in the volunteer and we say, look, this is the project, go do it, and I hope to see the results soon. And we don't think of a proper induction or training program for the volunteers. We're not thinking about the long-term side of the volunteer as well, because don't just think they were coming in and doing a certain specific role just for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or coming in and doing a project or something for you for a day and then they go away. Think of them as someone that you can basically bring in and hopefully convert them into a long-term volunteer. And the only way you're going to do that is to give them that proper sense that I'm part of this community, I'm part of this organization as well. And we'll go through the induction and training a bit later as well. The brand is also important. Who is your NFP? What does your NFP do? What is your structure like? On your web pages, do you also put aside a bit of time to talk about who you are, who's your management team, who are the staff, what are the different things that you engage in, not just in terms of your beneficiaries, but in terms of how you run the organization as well. Because if I want to join a company, that's what I look for as well. Like, how is the company run? How is the management practicing different things? And the last thing, which is really important, is the why. When a volunteer wants to join an opportunity, they want to know why they're doing it. What is the cause and who am I helping? So even though I'm coming in to do a finance project or an IT project or something like that, I still want to know what impact I'm making on society, what impact am I making to the beneficiaries. It might be indirect, but that's something that's attracting me. That's the whole reason I'm volunteering. It's actually for the beneficiary side. So make sure that why is always there as well.
Thanks, Raj. So we're actually going to look into a few of our not-for-profits as some case studies and examples to discuss a few of those points that Raj made. I just want to put out a quick heads up that, due to the nature of our not-for-profits, some of them about foster care and others about suicide prevention, some of the ones that we'll be mentioning today. So if any of these are triggers for yourself or you're uncomfortable with talking about today, feel free to just mute and move away for the next 5 minutes or so. We're just putting that out there. So the first example, I want to remind us of the KISS rule, the one that I have to tell myself very often: keep it simple, stupid. I'm one of those people who tends to go overboard, think too hard about things. Here is an awesome example from Barnardo's. So they were just looking for, similar to a lot of you who mentioned that labor or the operational costs are a big factor where volunteers can support. Here they were just looking for some virtual volunteering and some admin support. So they've kept it brief, they've kept it simple, looking for some remote support with some admin tasks. It's quite various, and I love how they've doubled the size for the why. You can see the how actually isn't that important. There's not much detail. You know it's going to be admin support. You know you can do it remotely, but you don't actually need to know what exact tasks they're going to be. Particularly, you can see 3 volunteers have joined at the bottom. They've all said they're interested. They don't need to know exactly what they'll be working on. You can see they've been given a brief outline, but I've actually talked to a few of these volunteers. Some of them are super passionate about young people and the work Barnardo's does. So if they can reduce the operational costs, even though they're not actually working with foster children, even though they're not directly helping the beneficiaries of Barnardo's, they can see the powerful work that Barnardo's does and know that any help towards this organization is furthering their cause. So they've kept it simple here with this awesome little advertisement for their role that they're looking for. And they found 3 volunteers in about the space of a week. So that was really awesome to see from Barnardo's. We also have almost the opposite end of the spectrum. This is very similar to a job description that you might see on LinkedIn or something like that. So I want to bring this to attention because it is really thorough. The pitch, as Raj said, was really important. You can see exactly what they'll be doing, who they'll be reporting to, the requirements. There's some really specific goals for the volunteer and what's expected of them. But that's awesome for a job description, and particularly on LinkedIn, I think that's the kind of detail I would be looking for. But when we're thinking about the volunteers, there's kind of a loss of the human elements here. You can see they're not really catering to the volunteer. This is clearly a very high ask for the volunteer. So they've done really well in terms of making sure that it's descriptive and the volunteer knows exactly what's required of them. But I think they've lost a bit of the human element in terms of what RWA does, how they support their beneficiaries. They're an awesome organization. They provide some wonderful support, particularly for refugees. But you can see here this role doesn't speak into that and how you'll be supporting this organization. So they've potentially gone too close to the job description side, whereas we often talk about with volunteering, obviously the final part of the job description is often, this is your expected salary. This is the buy-in that you're getting, whereas we don't have that for our volunteers. So what is that buy-in? It's actually the compassion, the cost of compassion, the price for why they're joining, what the why is of this organization. So if we lose that, we actually lose a huge part of this pitch. So I want to bring a final one, and this is about suicide prevention, but it's a really awesome organization that's quite young, and they've really taken the job description, pushed it towards a humanistic element. So it's really about the environment you'll be working with, what this opportunity is. So these people just jump on the phone, talk to volunteers, they become volunteers and talk to people who are looking to have someone to empathize with them and speak into their life situations. So it's a really beautiful opportunity. You can see they've even got a video about their organization. It's a really powerful video if you ever watch it. So for a volunteer coming in, they can really read about what they're getting involved in. And I think I wanted to draw the attention to the why of this organization, because it is a young organization. It has a really powerful story. So here, this is their community about us page. This is where they share about what they do on the platform. And they've kept it pretty simple here with just their vision and mission, and obviously their video as well. But I also wanted to show, so I've spoken to the founder of this organization many times, and it's a really powerful story about his father and his family's experience with mental health challenges. And that's actually why he develops the platform. He founded the organization. It's a really powerful story. And I think, why can't that be involved in the pitch, or why can't that be involved in the about us of the organization? I think anyone who buys into this organization, who hears that story, I think my initial thought is, how can I help? I don't even have to read through this, I'm thinking, how can I help this organization? So that why is a real drawing factor into this. So we're looking at our pitches, we're looking at how can we cater to our volunteers, how can we ensure we're supporting them and drawing them into the good work that our organizations are already doing. So Raj, you want to talk us through engaging and retaining volunteers?
Yeah, so I'm glad that that last slide talked about the why as well, because that's what is going to attract the volunteers to join you. But your next stage is actually, how do I engage and retain the volunteers? So the first thing is we have to set realistic expectations and actionable goals. And what do I mean by that? And it's the same as when Will put up about the RWA advertisement. There were so many things that was expected of the volunteer. Sometimes the volunteers get scared because to them it's not a full-time job. So make sure that it's something that I can actually achieve. Things that you can ask yourself if you're going to put out like a job scope in that nature is like, do the volunteers understand the mission and values of the organization? Do the volunteers understand the goals and objectives of the chosen opportunity? Are the goals provided in a smart way? And when I say smart, it has to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And that basically gives you the entire concept of what the project's about. Are the opportunities aligned to the goals that the volunteers volunteered for as well? And do they understand the task at hand, and is it within their comfort zone? And the comfort zone is also something you got to think about for the volunteer. So when you set their tasks and the objectives and what the targets are, make sure that you also understand the volunteer and know what their comfort zone is, and it's something they can achieve. The last thing you want is a volunteer coming into a project and then failing to achieve the targets that they are set, because then they'll feel like a failure, and then they wouldn't want to come back again because it's something they can't do. Or if you set a target and they go, look, I can never achieve this, they're going to drop out of it as well. So make sure it's something they can attain. Invest time and create a strategy for voluntary training program. So with this one, really a lot of people do not spend time with the volunteers. If they have a volunteer program, it's usually for a certain role, but for all the volunteers that come into the organization, you should have the same training that you would do with your staff. And it should include things like joining your social media, joining whatever programs that you have, having something to talk about the different causes, even meeting the beneficiaries, or meeting different aspects of the organization as well, because that's important to the volunteer. Make them feel like they're joining the organization and not just helping the organization for a short term. If I feel like a staff, or I feel like I'm part of a community, I'm going to do a lot more for this organization. So that's something that you have to bear in mind as well. Get to know them personally. So this one is where we have to treat them as we would treat any other human that joins. You're not coming in just to do a job. It's not like I'm hiring a plumber or electrician to come in and do a job and then go away. I'm actually trying to get someone to come in and be a part of my organization. So you should be asking the volunteers about their hobbies, developing an interest in what they're interested in, ask them to provide feedback on the role and the projects that they do, connect with them on social media. You can become a friend of all your volunteers as well. In fact, the better the relationship is that you have with the volunteer as a friend, the more they're going to do for the not-for-profit as well. Write thank you notes by hand. Make sure you do verbally thank them as well whenever they do something. And then you can also introduce your volunteers to other volunteers or staff that share the same interest. Respect your volunteers' values and time. The key word here is respect. And this is where you actually find out more about your volunteer, value their input, their opinions, listen to what they're saying at all times, because the more you listen to them, the more you understand them and you know what problems they might be facing in actually doing the task at hand. Be sensitive to their feelings and emotions. Be aware of their comfort zone. Again, the comfort zone thing is very important. And part of it is also not to judge the book by a cover. So don't stereotype your volunteers or don't have that high expectation without knowing, first of all, who your volunteer is. Okay. Something to consider when you talk about your volunteers' time is also understand what their time boundaries and commitments are like. Be available and responsive to whatever the request they have. Make a process of volunteering easy for people, so the registration of that should be quite easy. And then again, the whole thing about providing the volunteers with smart goals and processes. And then think about how you can include them in all the activities that you have within the organization as well. Tip number 5 is to recognize the volunteers and their achievements towards the organization. So you should actually set up a reward system for volunteers. And it doesn't have to be something where you're going to spend a whole lot of budget on. It doesn't have to be high-end prizes that you give the volunteer. Even simple things like a certificate or a letter of recognition, a thank you note is really good enough. And what you can have is different levels for different volunteers. So the more they volunteer, the more they get out of that recognition. You can actually host volunteer recognition events and reward your top performers. And the event is also very good in terms of getting to know them, having a social interaction with them, and making sure that they know that the work they're doing is very important to you. Simple thing can be things like giving volunteers food when they come into work or drinks, just to make them feel comfortable. A very important part, and this is not just for the volunteer, but also for your marketing. Feature your volunteer in stories on your blogs and social media. Not only are you giving them the recognition, and everyone is always proud of what they've done, they will start sharing that story to their community and their network. So the more stories you have with the volunteers, what you're going to find is, one, you're making sure that they appreciate what you're doing and they want to do more. The second thing is you're actually roping them into your marketing as well. And that goes a long way. Okay. The last tip is basically to be accessible for volunteers at all times. A lot of times people do not want to spend too much time with a volunteer because they think, okay, I'm taking the time out of my work day and I'm sacrificing what I could have done in these few hours. But every hour you spend with the volunteer, you're going to get so many more hours back. In fact, it's an investment. Look at it as an investment, because every hour I put in, I'm going to get back an average about 5 hours back. But it means that I have to spend some time with the volunteer, make sure they know what they need to do and why they're doing it. The other thing is, whenever they have an issue, their time is also precious. So you need to know exactly when they can work, what their timeline is like, whether they are actually making trips to and from where they are to your place and whether that is needed. But the tips that I would give you is make sure that you've got several modes of contact with them. And if you're not available, who's the secondary person I should contact? Because the last thing you want is their projects to be basically hitting a wall if they can't contact anyone to continue with that. So hopefully these tips will give you, a better way of engaging volunteers moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Raj. And these are things that, often many of you already know or would already be working towards. And what we're really hoping to do is speak into these spaces and remind you and encourage you to continue to develop the way you're meeting each of these goals. I want to think about, in particularly Oz Harvest is an organization we've worked with, and they nail some of these things as well. The way they recognize their volunteers, the way they really put them on a pedestal as this gold army. When you buy into the Oz Harvest community, they're kind of like joining a family. They really do get to know their volunteers personally. The teams that they form are really close friendship groups. Even if you go along to the welcome session, there's already those vibes of you're joining this family. We're going in this together. We're creating impact together. So there's a few of these ways that we can be constantly improving the way that we do each of these things. And I want to show some examples of that first one, of how we can set realistic expectations and actionable goals, because particularly with virtual volunteering, this is really important, because you often lose the human element if you're not able to see them, have a laugh with them, engage with them in that way that you normally would if they're coming into an office or meeting you face to face and getting to know the team or sharing lunch together. These other parts of it have to be really, really well considered, and how you do them as well. So I have a couple of examples from our platform in terms of really making sure that the volunteer knows what they're working through and what to do. So as Raj said, for you to get 5 hours out of a volunteer, you often need to put in an hour of your time. Whereas if you're putting in 0 hours, then obviously you're only getting 0 hours back. So this person has taken the time to really understand what they're looking for. So they've broken it down into clearly actionable goals. They could check in after each of these tasks and see, how did that go? Where to next? And these are flexible. So if they decide after this analyzing the as is state that something else needs to be done, then they could talk about that. But it's a really good benchmark for what the volunteer is going to do and how they're going to work together. And that human relational element is on the side of that, or in their conversations, in their Zoom room, things like that. So we're really making sure that we really focus on the bits that we can control, particularly with virtual volunteering. And another example, Habitat for Humanity Australia, again, another organization where if you go and volunteer there, you're often working with a team, sometimes building shelters for people, doing things in the community and really getting an awesome experience out of it. Whereas a WHS system reviewer, there aren't many more, well, for me, I would think that is quite a boring opportunity. I'm not interested in looking at work health and safety systems, but if I really believe in the Habitat for Humanity organization, then I've been thinking someone needs to do this and this will help their organization. So that's something I'm keen to do. So they've even gone to the depths of, this will take 6 hours, this will take 4 hours. We'll have a chat on Zoom, we'll figure out how to do each of these things. But they've really set out their tasks and set out their goals. And in the overview, I should have taken a screenshot of that as well. But in the overview, they've talked about how this actually supports their organization and allows them to develop and engage their other 300 or so volunteers. So by you being one volunteer coming in and supporting this, you're actually supporting the hundreds of volunteers that they work with day to day. Look, that's the last of our case studies. Are there any questions that you have at the moment? Feel free to pop them in the chat. Feel free to ask us. It can be related to any of the topics we've talked about so far today. Any questions that you have?
Yeah, feel free to pop into the chat if you're not comfortable speaking out. Otherwise, yeah, happy to have a chat right now.
I guess it's Ian Hawthorne here.
Hey, Ian.
I actually have raised this issue with, I think, Willem before and got some response to it. But I suppose I still have an underlying slight concern that as a military history museum, that we are sort of well off the usual scope of the organisations that you deal with, and particularly sort of the expectations of the individual and corporate volunteers, because most of it seems to be to do with the health and well-being of people in many different ways. I mean, the cynic, I don't agree with it, but the cynic sort of could say that we're all about capturing historically the way that we kill people. And, you know, I do wonder sort of whether our particular organisation really fits in with the expectations, if you will, of your normal customers.
So that's a very good topic that you brought up, and it's about the cause. And what you're going to find is that, yes, it might not attract a large number of volunteers, but there will be a portion of volunteers who are interested in history and education and learning about our past as well. So it's not really so much about catering to the whole array of volunteers that are out there. Yes, one of the top few causes that attract a lot of volunteers is usually children and pets. if you got a picture of that, you're going to attract a lot more volunteers. But that doesn't mean that there's no volunteers for all the other kinds of causes as well. When you talk about the array of the population, and just like yourself, you are interested in this cause and you're interested in what you're doing, there's going to be a portion of the public that's going to be interested in this as well. And what you got to do is make sure that you put it out in such a way that they understand your cause and understand the benefit of what you're doing. You're not going to get the cynics out there, for sure, but you're going to get the people that are interested in history. Like I myself am actually interested in history. So when I go touring and all that, one of the big things I go for are all these museums. And I do know we've got a whole lot of volunteers that help out in terms of museum tours and stuff like that. So it's all about how you actually put it out in terms of your cause and what the benefit is to the public and to the volunteer as well. And that's something we can talk about offline as well to try and get you to scope it out.
Yep, thanks,
Raj. And I know many of your organizations, even if they're not in war history, might be feeling, oh, we're a bit left of field or we're not in the social media spotlight as much, but I hope that spoke into that a little bit as well. I'll just have a look at a few of the chat messages. Thanks, Maj. So many of our not-for-profits resonate with this. We are so time poor. Even thank you so much for coming out to this event. I know it's an hour of your day that you won't get back. So thank you for taking the time to invest into your development and invest into our community as well. We know the amount of time it can take to engage with volunteers, and as we said, to get the most out of volunteers. What we've explored a lot is volunteer champions. So an actual volunteer role is for those volunteers who've come in and are passionate about your organization. You need someone to engage and encourage the other volunteers. So that can be a volunteer as well. So their time can be volunteered to further your cause, to do admin, or it can be to engage other volunteers. So make the most of the resources that you do have. We know how time poor, particularly the staff positions, particularly if you only have 1 or 2 staff, or even if you're volunteering for the organization. So yeah, feel free to try and harness the volunteering power and the community power of volunteers. We have a lot of corporate volunteers on our platform, and they often volunteer and then drag in other volunteers. So they're kind of tasked with managing those friends that they've brought in and ensuring that they're getting the most out of it. I hope that speaks into that a little bit. We have another question about reward systems. We've seen we've seen the certificates. Even we do that. We mail out certificates to volunteers who've contributed a large amount of time and show that we're thankful to them, so they can actually receive that in the mail. And I think that's quite powerful. Thank yous on social media. Does anyone, maybe from the collective wisdom we have here today, does anyone have any other budget-friendly rewards for volunteers or ways of recognizing volunteers? Does anyone else want to try and speak into that as well?
Yeah, I think the suggestions from Ria from Red Cross is very good as well. The morning, afternoon teas where they're recognized, the monthly newsletters where they're recognized. These are little things that you can do to where it doesn't cost you too much as well. Anyone else has got any good suggestions out there? Others, I'll just fill in the gap by saying yes. It doesn't have to be high budget. It can be as little as just a little cert that you mail out. It can be a letter, a handwritten letter that you send out. It can be even a social media message that you put out. And those are very powerful. What you find is, and like someone just mentioned, volunteering should be a reward in itself, but unfortunately, that's not what drives most people. Most people do stuff and they want to be recognized, they want to be put on a pedestal a lot of times. I know when I achieve something, I will post it on my social media to go, hey, I've done it. And that's the same with most people. So if you put a story about them or even just recognize them in a couple of sentences and they can share it to say, hey, this is what so-and-so said about me, or this is what I've been told of my achievements, it's good enough. If you've got a bit more budget, yeah, you can send a letter. There have been suggestions of even sending a letter with a tea bag, and you can have a tea session with them now that you can't meet them face to face. It can be a virtual tea session that you have with everyone as well. So it can be as simple as that.
Well, I guess that this is Ian here.
Yes,
sort
Ian.
of something that's rather specific, I suppose, to our sort of organisation. But we badly need one stream of volunteers, sort of who can and are interested in working on very complex but old style, heavy, in this case, military equipment. But I suppose one inducement that we also offer sort of is, well, okay, you come and work on the vehicles, we'll train you to drive them. And most people, I think, get a bit of a buzz, from getting that sort of extra particular involvement.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I would love to drive a tank.
Well, we'll have to make an appointment for you one day.
There we go. See, that's a reward, and then I can post that on my social media as well, which will then market the museum too, right? So there's always a few different ways of getting multiple rewards out of doing something, right? So you give them appreciation, and they also market you as well as helping you. Okay, we're running a bit out of time, so I'll just move on to the next slide. Yeah, so for those of you who are on the platform, that's great. But if you haven't joined the platform or you've not heard of Community before, these are reasons to join. And if you're on the platform and did not realize, one of the things that you can do is actually collaborate with other not-for-profits. We've had instances where different not-for-profits had projects and they actually found ways to work with each other. We've got now actually over 2,000 skilled volunteers on the platform. And if you haven't had one, we also offer that consultation session. So do talk to Kata, or you can actually go onto the website. And I'll introduce Kata right now. Kata, are you around?
I am here.
There we go.
Good morning, everyone.
Some of you have talked to her as well. So she's basically the one who can give you more information about the platform and how to join it and how to get your free consultation. And if you've got any questions, she can answer that for you as well. But if you want to, you can go onto the website and book that free consultation as well. Okay. And another aspect of joining us is actually the marketing side. So with the not-for-profits that join us, we do help out in terms of marketing, not just in terms of the social media posts that we put out. If you completed projects and all that, we can do a whole post out there to thank your volunteer, thank the organization, the corporates, and get their PR involved as well. So that way you get a lot more people boosting your social media. One of the other big things we do is campaigns, and to talk more about it is Maddie, our marketing guru.
Hello, everyone. So I'm the marketing and content team leader at Community. My name's Madison, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about how exactly that we help not-for-profits tell their story better, put out their why, and attract volunteers that way. So Community runs different campaigns based on different causes. And we want to bring attention to specific areas of not-for-profits and also attract the businesses and volunteers that are passionate about that cause and create greater social impact and engagement from that. So eventually we want to have a cause-based community around each of the sustainable development goals. And recently we completed our Take Climate Action campaign, which ran from March till the end of May, brought 36 not-for-profits, 3 businesses, and 335 volunteer supporters to collaborate on climate action. So we just launched our Pathway to Employment campaign, which is supporting not-for-profits operating in the education and employment space. And especially at this time where employment is a major concern for many Australians of all different demographics. We want to direct our support to this area and help not-for-profits anywhere from refugee and migrant employment to supporting children in poverty to get a better education. So as part of this, not-for-profits will gain access to our pool of volunteers, all for free. And all of these volunteers have already opted in and believe in education and employment as a cause, and they'll collaborate on skill-based volunteering opportunities Also, you'll develop a stronger relationship with your existing and any new corporates that are on our platform, and especially education and employment. It's an identified concern for many businesses, as you know, they have graduate programs and different involvements in the community. So this cause speaks to them specifically as well. And also to build awareness of your organization in this space, and we'll be sharing your projects, sharing stories, and kind of capturing any of the content that comes out of this and using it as a part of this full community. So we'll send a link. I think Olivia's just posted a link if you want to click that, and there's more information there and also some ways to get in touch with us. And if you're interested and this sounds good to you, please let us know.
Thanks so much, Maddie. And thank you everyone for joining us today. That's all for this morning. I mentioned in the chat, if you still want to ask some questions, or if you still feel like you want to keep these discussions rolling, I can see there was some great chat in the chat room. Feel free to hang around for the next 5 to 10 minutes. We'll hang around for a little bit. But thank you so much. Again, I hope this was an encouragement for yourselves to keep developing your organization and in the way you engage with volunteers. We'd love to see you on the platform. We provide so much support. We're so thankful for the way the not-for-profits are working in Australia. So we'd love to have you on board. We would love to keep providing support. But again, thank you so much for your time this morning. We hope to see you again soon. We will be running another event on September the 1st. So I'm not sure if we have a registration link yet, but just pop it in to your diary. We'd love to see you there. And if you know anyone else who is hoping to get some support in finding, engaging with volunteers, feel free to pass them our way. But thank you again for attending this morning. We hope to see you again next time.
Thanks, Willem and Raj. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Good to see you all. Yeah, we're happy to hang around for a while if you've got any other questions.
I think it was a question from Amanda on the chat. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe that part of the discussion.
I think I saw that one, and I'm not sure if Amanda's still around. Oh, hi, Amanda. Lovely to see you this morning. We had a phone call the other day about graphic designers and how we look for skilled volunteers, but there's something about graphic design that's a bit harder to find volunteers, potentially because of the freelance work they do. So really it's another job that enters their pipeline. So potentially it's a trickier space to find volunteers, and we have noticed that on our platform, and we've seen that from other platforms. So it is definitely a market trend. But we have our own graphic designers who've done some volunteering as well. So we'll be reaching out to our contacts about that one. In terms of how to increase engagement there against a tough market, I guess all we can do is continue putting the message out there, continue bringing in those tips that we've talked about today in the pitch. The Wive Koala Kids, I receive all of your emails, and I love them. It's so awesome. I considered coming down for your Melbourne event a few months ago, but so maybe next year. Yeah, exactly. So that's all we can do, particularly in a tougher market. Yeah, I'm not sure if you had any other thoughts on that, Amanda.
No, it makes sense, because we have advertised on some other platforms and we haven't had any response there either. So what you're saying, it seems to be a market trend.
Yeah, totally. I'm glad. I'm glad it wasn't just our volunteers who are lazy and not joining your opportunity. It's definitely across the board. We're seeing that as well with those kind of freelance skills and those roles there. So I mean, we're constantly growing our volunteer base. We just crossed the 2,000 volunteer mark, so it was a very exciting milestone for us. So it might just be a matter of finding more and more graphic designers. Maybe they could team up and join together or something like that. But we're providing active support and finding new volunteers there. Did we have any other questions this morning?
And as Joyce brought up as well, we are actually targeting the universities as part of the Pathway to Employment program. So we'll be bringing in a lot of university students who will be mentored by corporate employers, and so that will also enlarge the base that can help out as well.
Great, thanks, Raj.
Cool. Any other questions? Did I miss any on the chat?
I saw one about examples of certificates of appreciation. I actually created one recently for a few of our volunteers. It was very simple. I'm not a graphic designer. I just used Canva. It's an awesome free resource for creating content on Canva if you haven't used that before. But the bottom line is it doesn't have to be incredibly fancy. I thought about making it like one of my university testaments in finding gold writing or something like that. But the reality is we just included the logos of the organizations they support, made it clear you contributed. It was something like 60 hours of your time to this organization over the past couple of months. That's an awesome achievement. It's signed by us, recognized by the not-for-profit as well. So it was pretty simple, but it showed clearly the impact that that person had had on the organization and that the organization was thankful. And I mean, they also received a handwritten letter from the CEO who was in Fiji. So it was a Fiji book drive. So the volunteer was working with the Australian base, but they received a letter from the Fiji side, and some of the kids had put some drawings at the bottom. So it was very simple, didn't cost much other than a couple of dollars to send a letter overseas, but it showed how much that volunteer was appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there's something we can roll out as well, where we do a joint cert between us and you as well. So it could be a not-for-profit plus community logo, and then we send out a joint certificate. So we can come up with something like that down the road as well.
Thanks, Marge. I can see you're asking about the program. So I'm assuming you're referring to the program where we target university students and volunteers. So that this current page that I'm sharing at the moment is the pathway to employment. So this is where we're working with university students. So a lot of them actually require volunteer hours to finish their degree. Some of them are looking for mentoring, so they'll be working with corporate mentors. And what they're hoping to do is actually take on a volunteering opportunity. So they'll be working with a not-for-profit with the support of a corporate volunteer, a skilled professional to work on various opportunities. So that'll be kicking off in the next couple of weeks. So would highly recommend, if you haven't posted an opportunity on the platform, get it on there.
Yeah, I think it was Kata has answered the question. It was actually on
certificate one.
Yes.
The program. No worries.
You see, that's what happens when we meet over Zoom.
Thank you, Kata. That's the link for Canva. Would highly recommend using that for all your creative needs. Well, look, it's 11:05. If there's no more questions, we'd love to see you in September. Feel free to book one of those links with Kata. But otherwise, we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us today.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good week ahead.
Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.